One of my lifelong strategies for dealing with my feelings has been music, and playing music and writing music. I think one of the main reasons I became a musician was because it really provided me with this comfort and this joy, uh, and also a sense of purpose, actually, and of accomplishment when I would. So, and I have, I recorded an album, 7 years ago, but I haven't really done much music since then, but just recently, out of the kind of mind state I've been in, the struggle with our world, I just wrote a song, and I'm working on recording it here in my home office studio here, and it's about my feelings about this, about our country, which is a difficult thing to write a song about without it sounding kind of too on the nose or whatever, sort of, you know, um, propaganda or something. But it's much more written as a very emotional kind of plea. And so I'm going to play it on Saturday at that Soberfest thing. I haven't. I'm calling it "Coming Back" because it doesn't really have a chorus, but that gets repeated at the end. Um, and anyway, I don't know. I just thought I'd mention that. I guess, if I'm trying to be a Dharma teacher here, which means I'm trying to be of service in some way, I guess my reason for talking about that is to say we all need to find our ways to uh, to handle what's going on in our inner lives. Um, I've been thinking a lot about perception, and was trying to sort that out in my mind enough to give a talk on it today, but um, I, I I haven't quite got it uh, developed in a coherent way. But just what I'll say before we start to meditate is when you when you kind of read like revelatory history, like Stamped from the Beginning, where you learn um, about a history that you didn't realize existed, it makes you realize that your belief about what the world is uh, was false and was constructed. And so perception is kind of the construction of the world, both externally and internally, that we do. So as children, we're grown up and we're taught to perceive the world in certain ways, and to see it, that like typically, an American child is brought up that to understand certain things about American history and what America represents. And so we're born into this world that we don't really see that it's actually a dynamic world. It's not only are we being given a version of it that's just a version, but also it's not something static, and um, meaning that we are born into history, whereas I think we have a sense that we're born into something static, like this is the world. Um, and as it changes, this is one of the reasons why older people try so hard to hold on to uh, a perceived past. It's what Make America Great Again is about. It's that as the world changes, that perception that it is a certain way gets disrupted, and that disrupts our whole sense of ourselves, and is difficult and painful. And so there's a tremendous resistance to it unless we develop wisdom and an understanding that, oh, we are actually living in history. There isn't something solid thing called history. I don't know if that's making any sense, but I will say to bring that into a Dharma teaching then is to, and where this becomes a path to enlightenment, is when we're able to see that our own creation of who we are is also just a perception and is also just as much an illusion as our belief about the world externally being something, some static thing. Our belief about ourselves internally is also a misperception. And when we can see through that, that's where the breakthrough of awakening comes internally. So there are, there's two kinds of enlightenment, external and internal. But now I'm just making stuff up, so we better meditate. Oh, nice. Thank you, Dana. Nice to see that you uh, were reading that with your kids. You say what? Oh, right. He's got a book for kids, right? Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, nice. Thank you. I've heard alcoholism being called a disease of perception, indeed. Okay, so meditation. So we're going to talk today about the factors of awakening, and the one that I think is sort of least understood and it's kind of so important in our work is the investigation of dharmas. So just settling into your posture, coming into stillness, eyes closed or just gaze lowered. And in a sense, our whole practice is investigation. And this is one of the things that so clearly ties it to 12-step work, the inventory. And while our meditative inventory might not be always about a moral inventory, this sense of investigation is inherent to the process of recovery, this honest looking at ourselves. And again, while in recovery, that's more about looking at flaws or things that we need to address personally. With mindfulness and meditation, there isn't such a personal connection. The investigation is more impersonal, more an attempt to be objective rather than subjective. So we start by feeling ourselves in a body. Not your body. Your body doesn't belong to anyone. The body that was born and has grown, aged. Because of the miracle of consciousness, you can feel your body, or this body, sensations. investigate the sensations in the body. When we're first learning meditation, someone says, pay attention to your breath or pay attention to your sensations. There can be the thought, well, that's silly, that's obvious, the breath, the sensations. I don't need to pay attention to them. I know what they feel like. And then when we actually do it, we discover that we didn't know what our body felt like. We didn't know what our breath felt like. We had previously one perception of those things, and now we have a new perception of them. At first, this can be disorienting. We're feeling things we've never felt before, never been aware of. Can actually get concerned. What's going on in my body? What are these sensations? Is there something wrong with me? Am I supposed to feel this? But little by little, we become comfortable with this new way of feeling ourselves. And of course, there's always the risk that we then turn that into a new solid belief and perception. Oh, this is what breath feels like. Oh, this is what sensations are like in the body. And then we stop paying attention, not realizing that each moment is a unique moment of experience. And though it may be similar to and related to previous experiences, it is not the same. And the mind is always looking for something of interest. And when we try to pay attention to the simple experience of breath and body, the mind thinks it's not interesting, that it's seen all this before. So it pulls you away. So one of the things we have to do with our practice is become convinced that our present moment experience is interesting. We have to keep looking until we become clear that this moment is worth paying attention to. And one of the things that gives us that sense is the pleasant feeling that can arise as the mind becomes absorbed. We learn that there is a pleasure in being present. And this becomes interesting for the mind. Okay. I hope everyone is healthy and safe. The air in the Bay Area has improved, he said, coughing. Uh, but I do see that heat is coming back in a few days, so we will be faced probably with more fires. Uh, so, um, so I wanted to begin talking today. Well, I guess I started to talk about this the other day, but really start to get deeper into the 7 factors of awakening. Um, it's another, list in Buddhist teachings, and one that, when I first uh, heard a talk about this, um, that there were these 7 factors of enlightenment or 7 factors of awakening, I found that really inspiring. That I had this kind of um, vague sense of what enlightenment was, and then to realize that the Buddha um, kind of said, "Well, here's what you know is involved and what has to be developed in order for this to happen." I love the practicality of that. The idea that this wasn't some vague thing that just happened, if you took just enough LSD and whatever, went to a Grateful Dead concert, and then you'd get enlightened, but that there was really a process. And so I'm going to get into this in a pretty serious Buddhisty way. Um, Once again, I think you'll see many parallels with recovery, and I'll try to keep pointing to that, because sometimes I can get more into my Dharma teaching and forget that people are, here to kind of make that connection with recovery. So I may have even gone through this last time. Um, anyway, the 7 factors are mindfulness, investigation, energy, joy, tranquility, concentration, equanimity. And there's a very interesting way of looking at them as a kind of sequential process. I'm looking down because I'm looking at uh, Venerable Analayo's book Satipatthana. So just to put this in context of the Buddhist teachings, where this uh, teaching is coming from, and although it appears in other places, it's in the teachings on mindfulness, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The 4th foundation uh, includes the 7 factors of awakening, and the 4th foundation of mindfulness, is sort of um, hard to hard to define. Actually, it's quite difficult to define. Um, but because the first foundation of mindfulness is mindfulness of the body, and I think at some point fairly soon I'm just going to do a series just on. We're just going to get into the 4 foundations of mindfulness, because that's like a whole teaching we really should be going deeply into. Now that I feel like I've got just unlimited time to just do a class forever, I might as well do, why hold back? Anyway, mindfulness of the body, which seems pretty obvious, and there's a lot to it in the teachings, but it's fairly simple. Mindfulness of feeling or feeling tone, more subtle, a little trickier to understand, but it's like noticing whether things are pleasant or unpleasant or neither. And then the third foundation is called mind or mind states. And that's sort of understandable. It's like, okay, I'm going to be aware of what's in my mind or what's going on with my mind. So that can sort of, go between thoughts, but it can also include emotions. And so perceptions, it's in multiple kind of areas. But the fourth foundation is called, they don't really translate it much. They usually call it just dharmas, or in Pali, dhammas. And the translation, though, is equally vague. Phenomena, mindfulness, mindful of phenomena. I mean, that doesn't really tell me much. So yeah, I'll read a little bit of what Analio says about the fourth foundation. What this foundation of mindfulness is actually concerned with are specific mental qualities, such as the 5 hindrances and the 7 awakening factors, and analyses of experience into specific categories. These mental factors and categories constitute central aspects of the Buddha's way of teaching. His teaching, the Dharma. During actual practice, one is to look at whatever is experienced in terms of these dharmas. So the way I've come to phrase this is that we are trying to look at our experience through the lens of dharma rather than through the lens of self. So this again comes back to perception, right? Normally we see things, what does it mean to me? And it's like, oh, things are really bad, like in the world, like I'm really upset. And then through the lens of dharma, it can be, oh, there's greed, hatred, and delusion, or everything is impermanent. So that's shifting from the lens of me, I'm upset about it because it affects me, to the lens of dharma. And you can see how freeing that is, right? This is one of the great values of having wisdom, is that we don't see everything just through this perception of our own fears, our own concerns, but rather we get this broader view. And like the view of history, it's very much like having a broad view of history, because when you look at history, what do you see? You actually see the Dharma. You see, oh, it's the same stuff over and over. What happens through history? Oh, empires rise and empires fall. Uh, Wes Nisker, one of my favorite teachers and friends, and he's a Buddhist teacher, but also a humorist. Some years ago, he was talking about the fall of the American Empire. And he said, it might not be so bad. Rome just became Italy. So, maybe we'll just become like Italy, we won't be Rome anymore. So, but that's that perception, this broader view, right? And so you can see how important this is in our development of mindfulness, because it's great to be mindful of your body and all these, personal experiences, but at a certain point, to really go beyond just, oh, I'm noticing myself walking, or I'm noticing myself eating or breathing, but to go into really having a wise view of the world, we need to be investigating and seeing things through the lens of Dharma. And that's why it's important to study the Dharma. Guess what? It's not enough to just meditate and sort of think, oh, my meditation makes me feel better and I'm more peaceful. Well, that's great, because, in this moment you feel better. But what are you going to do when everything's getting crazy and you don't have time to meditate, and you're getting caught up in stuff? Well, you're going to have to depend on your wisdom, right? You're going to have to depend on your understanding of reality, because that's what's going to keep you from falling into these traps, falling constantly into the trap of self-centered obsession, right? Perception. All right. So the 7 factors, we are meant to, in our own practice, to see how these are developing, to see if these are developing. And so this is why I bring this into the area of inventory, that with our practice, we can ask ourselves about these things. Am I developing mindfulness? Am I being mindful? Am I investigating? And it's investigation of Dharma. Am I looking at reality in a careful way? Do I have energy and engagement? Is there joy? Is there, that kind of uplift? Is there tranquility? Is there concentration? Is there equanimity? And as we look at those, the way I work with this as a inventory is I say, well, this area is weak. I need to focus more on more concentration, or I need to focus on more investigation. Investigation is an area where I think it's easy to fall short. And it's really what I was pointing to in the little bit of guidance in the meditation this morning. The idea that, we start meditating and it's like, well, there's my breath and my body, like those aren't very interesting, right? Well, the only way they become interesting is if we investigate. And what I mean by that is if we look more closely. And that's one way, one aspect of investigation is just to make more effort to look more closely at things. In particular, I'm talking about in meditation, because it's very easy to just go like, okay, in, out, and not really feel the breath, not really be with the breath. But then if we really look closely, we realize, oh, there's a lot of different sensations in that. So I'm going to read a little bit from Analio. And again, I mean, this book was written originally as a PhD thesis, so it's got a little bit of that, scholarly aspect to it. But if we can get to the juicy parts, I think you'll see that he has a way of explaining things that's very powerful and clear. And he calls this the conditional sequence of the awakening factors. In other words, they work in a progressive way. They build upon each other. In the conditional sequence of the awakening factors, investigation of dhammas develops out of well-established mindfulness. Okay? So you establish your mindfulness, and then you say, I need to look more closely at this. He says, such investigation seems to combine 2 aspects. On the one hand, an inquiry into the nature of experience, and on the other, the correlation of this experience with the teachings of the Buddha. So again, really critical idea. Like, I'm going to be aware of this experience, but then I'm going to ask myself, what am I seeing? How would the Buddha talk about this? How does the experience I'm having right here correlate with what I understand about Buddhism? And so that's why looking at impermanence, that's like one of the key ways we investigate. You can look at your breath and go, I'm just breathing in and out. But when you realize, oh, it's impermanent, well, that changes it, your understanding of it, because you realize it's not just the same thing over and over, it's a constant change. And the bigger picture of that is that, you sit with your body is changing every day. On one day you wake up and you look in the mirror and you go, I'm not the person I was. What am I going to do about that? How am I going to live with that? So the investigation of dharmas can be understood as an investigation of subjective experience based on the discrimination gained through familiarity with the Dharma. So in other words, we're using our personal experience to look for the universal, to see the universal within our personal experience. And now he takes a particular turn. Such discrimination refers in particular to the ability to distinguish between what is wholesome or skillful for progress on the path and what is unwholesome or unskillful. So we're looking at where is this leading it to a positive or a negative thing. And he says this directly contrasts investigation of dharmas with the hindrance of doubt, which arises owing to the lack of clarity about what is wholesome and what is unwholesome. Now, I think we can bring this back to recovery right here, because in our addiction, our behavior is unwholesome, right? But we don't investigate it. We don't look at it honestly. We look at it through a skewed perception, a distorted belief system, which is, oh, I like this, or I need this. This is who I am. All these kind of things that we put on our addiction. And when we investigate, which is what step one essentially does, we see our addiction for what it is. Maybe we take the 20 questions. That's a form of investigation, right? Is this working? Oh, does this affect my job? Does this affect my relationships? Does this affect my health? Okay, wholesome or unwholesome, right? So investigation is, right there at the heart of recovery. The fourth step is an investigation. The eighth step is an investigation, investigating who were the people I harmed. And it's a question that comes up so much in sponsorship, is, should I do this next thing? Should I take this job? Should I get in this relationship? Should I move to this city? And our sponsor will kind of, if we have a wise sponsor, well, where's that going to lead? Are good things going to come from that? This person you want to date is a heroin dealer. Do you think that's a good idea? You're being offered a job as an arms dealer in Saudi Arabia. Do you think you should go there? It doesn't sound wholesome, So investigation is something we come back to. So then further, I'll say that, and this is not in the book here, that meditation is so much about investigation, and there are multiple levels of investigation, and the most common one is our personal investigation into our psychology. And this is not really something that the Buddha taught, but it's clearly something that Western meditators do. That they, we sit down, and because of our training, our orientation, we're very psychologically and personally oriented. So we tend to analyze, oh, why am I thinking this? Why am I feeling this? Why am I acting like this? And that's a valid, of course we don't want to overdo it, but we want to keep it, it's still something that's useful. But then there's also this further investigation of Dharma. So I see that someone asked a question about the title of the book. So I hear my phone keeps buzzing. Somebody must love me. I'm going to turn it completely off. Okay, the title of this book is Satipatthana, the Direct Path. Aha, I knew that. To realization. It's not an easy read. I'll tell you that. Oh, what? I just sent that to Eleanor. Sorry, Eleanor. How did I do that? Let me send that to everybody. So Satipatthana is a Pali word. Pali is the language of the earliest Buddhist scriptures. And it's translated as foundations of mindfulness. And since there are 4 of them, we call the sutta. So Satipatthana refers specifically to the Satipatthana Sutta, and so it's a discourse or a teaching, and it means we translate it as 4 foundations of mindfulness. Foundations is a weird word. There's different languages that have been, or different translations for that word, but this is where this turns into a PhD thesis. So let's get back on track here a little bit. Because I want to get you through this sequential connection of the awakening factors. So mindfulness, when applied, when we really engage mindfulness, it gets us into investigation. So here he says, the development of investigation in turn arouses the awakening factor of energy, called virya. The arising of such energy is related to putting forth effort. The discourses further qualify such energy with the attribute unshaken. This qualification draws attention to the need for effort or energy to be applied with continuity, a specification which parallels the quality of being diligent mentioned in the definition part of the Satipatthana Sutta. Excuse me. According to the discourses, energy can manifest either mentally or physically. As an awakening factor, energy stands in direct opposition to the hindrance, sloth, and torpor. Makes sense. So a couple things to say about this. Just to be clear about this connection. So the idea is I'm mindful, then I start to pay attention more closely. And that attention itself energizes me. So this kind of, we can connect this with, there's a famous phrase from Fritz Perls, the founder of Gestalt therapy, who says, boredom is the lack of attention. Well, sloth and torpor, being sleepy, the one way to overcome that is to find something that you're interested in or that excites you. Like if you're really tired and somebody who you find really attractive wants to engage you in some kind of physical interaction, it will tend to wake you up. Okay, that was a sort of weird way of saying that sex will, awakens your energy. So let's, if you remember, those of you, well, I was going to say those of you who went to college, let's say those of you who went to school, you might remember like being in class and the teacher's talking about something and you're not interested and you fall asleep. And then all of a sudden they bring up something you're interested in and you wake up. And it's not that you've had some rest and now you're awake. It's that your mind energizes you because there's interest. So investigation is tied in with interest. And then that interest arouses energy. So this is, in our meditation practice, this is applied when you find yourself getting sleepy, you try to pay closer attention to your experience. Like, can you get interested in what it feels like to be sleepy? And will that actually help you to overcome being sleepy? Or just get interested in anything, get interested in your breath. Because most of the time when you get sleepy in meditation, it's not because you need sleep. It's because your mind isn't interested. You're not engaged. You're not investigating. So Now, the other thing that I want to point out about what Venerable Analayo says, this qualification draws attention to the need for effort or energy to be applied with continuity. This, for me, is the thing. It's like, I, because you look at the factors of awakening, you look at the Buddhist teachings, you think, man, I got to get this. I got to get enlightened. This, you get excited. It's like, and okay, effort. I got to make more effort. And you get in there, and you're really efforting. And after a while, you find, wait, like this isn't working. Like I'm trying too hard, and you begin to realize that there's no amount of effort in a given moment that will make you be enlightened. And of course, we kind of tie this to recovery as well. And in recovery, we talk about it as God, but that well, what's important in recovery isn't like working the steps perfectly 24/7, and having the perfect program. It's continuity. What is it that we define as success in 12-step world? The amount of time that we've been clean and sober. That's that, and that might not be fair in a way. I mean, but it is kind of what we do. It's about showing up. It's not, okay, you've been sober for 35 years, but you were really an asshole when you were 20 years sober. So we're going to subtract from your recovery. That doesn't count. No, we kind of go, you made it. And with meditation, same thing, right? I mean, I've been practicing Buddhist meditation for 40 years. I have not meditated every day in that time, but I'm kind of stubborn, like most days. I meditated this morning before I met with you guys, because this doesn't count. Meditating with you guys doesn't count for me. And that's, I don't, mean to say that as somewhat like I'm not trying to brag about, my meditation practice. I don't think I'm a very good meditator, frankly, in terms of like, I don't know, whatever the standard, like a good meditator is somebody who sits down and they really are like engaged and present, and they're not letting their mind drift off. I spent the morning meditation thinking about the arrangement to this song that I've been recording, how horrible the Republicans are and what we have to do about that. What time I'm going to go to play golf today. And occasionally I felt my breath, But if you do that for 40 years, it works. I mean, it just, and it's weird that I'm doing all that, but there is such a deeply, what happens with that continuity is that the neural connections to the body, the mind-body connection gets so deep that I'm feeling myself sitting there. And I'm not feeling details of my breath, but I'm feeling my body. And the thinking is happening, but it's like in this picture, in this space. There's no doubt. I mean, if you want to take this teaching of what the Buddha teaches to its full culmination, where the awakening factors are fully developed, you can do it. And it takes a big commitment. The best way to do it is as a monastic. Short of that, though, which is where I am, there's tremendous benefit from this, and it's transformative, you know. And I, I, you know, am you know, I don't know if I say happily, but I certainly admit that I have not fulfilled these teachings to the extent that I know they can be fulfilled. I've done what I'm able to do, and I think each of us does what we're able to do. So I like to put out attainable goals for people. Um, I mean, full enlightenment is attainable, but what I mean is I want to make goals that we can all uh, have those goals, and we can do them day by day, and see the benefit of them. And I'll say that to me, just like staying sober one day at a time, meditating one day at a time, it's attainable, and it's valuable, even on those days when it feels like it isn't. Even when it feels like my sobriety isn't doing anything, you know, my meditation isn't doing anything, it is. And even if it's just because you're connecting one day to the next, that unbroken thread has an underlying power that's just undeniable, you know. Uh, well, I didn't give you guys any time to talk. uh, I do have a little time before I have to leave for the golf course, so you know, um, if anybody wanted to say something. Oh, what page in the Satipatthana did I read from? Okay, Deb, I was, that section starts on page 235. It's in the awakening factors section. What else? What are the other questions? What were the 7 factors of enlightenment? Again, um, Anne put them up further in the chat, I think. But anyway, they are mindfulness, investigation, energy, joy, tranquility, concentration, equanimity. So, you know, and so we just gotten through energy today, which means we can pick up with joy. But just to point out that equanimity is the 7th factor of awakening. Equanimity is the 4th of the Brahma Viharas. Equanimity is the 4th of the 4 jhanas. There's something about equanimity that apparently is important. We'll get to that at some point. I got an email this morning from Greg Pergament, who says that our coming retreat now has 27 people enrolled. So if you're interested in that retreat, you should enroll soon, because we're at some point going to cut off, I think 40 or so is going to be about our limit. Maybe more, but and I do have a little problem, because that retreat is going to be run on my Zoom account, and the Friday night, a week from this coming Friday, I'm not sure if how I'm going to be able to have this class, my Friday night class. So Angela, we're going to have to sort that out. If you know, we can both be you know, in there at the same time. So I'm warning people just right now. It's possible that I won't have a class, or that I'll be using a different Zoom link that night. And so if you go to this Zoom link that night, we're talking about October 2nd, I believe, and nothing's happening, go to my website, and I'll have a note on the front page of my website about what's happening. and at least I can get someone else to teach it and get them to do it on their thing. We'll see. All right, you guys, thank you for coming, and call your senator. They say call the people in your own state. And there's, Google for a script. There people are asking, it's pretty obvious, but tell them don't do this. And if it's a Democratic senator, tell them get rid of the filibuster and expand the Supreme Court if they do this. Just talking points. There you go. Just thought I'd bring you all back down to reality. Breathe, notice impermanence, offer loving kindness to all beings, and compassion, forgiveness. Yeah. May we all be safe and peaceful. Blessings.